Everyone, welcome back to Manufacturing Hub. If you're watching us live, this is Wednesday sometime. If you're not watching us live or listening to in podcast format, it could be as early as Thursday. Everyone, welcome back. Vlad and I are super excited and super happy to get back into our live Wednesday cadences. I will make a couple of notes. We've got some additional videos and content coming out from Automate, so be sure to watch the Manufacturing Hub channels as well as Vlad and my own channels, where we've got videos coming out over the next month or 5 weeks with conversations. Speaking of some of those conversations, we actually had a fantastic conversation with Ujjwal, who we'll introduce in just a moment, at Automate with the Siemens folks, talking about de-globalization. And it was a short conversation, as you guys will see coming up in the release cadence. And my thought is, this is an amazing conversation. We should go have this conversation because it probably affects directly or indirectly everyone who regularly listens to Manufacturing Hub. If you guys are new here, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. If you guys are new to Manufacturing Hub, my name is Dave. This guy up here is Vlad. Every week, or just about every week, we talk to other practitioners in the manufacturing automation technology space about different topics. And we're really excited to go ahead and dive into this. If you guys have questions as we're going through, please feel free to go ahead and ask the questions. We will do our very best to get through as many of them as we possibly can during this, and then we'll do our very best to get through the rest of the questions off stream after. Without further ado, everyone officially welcome to Manufacturing Hub. My name is Dave. This guy up here is Vlad. This is episode 267. We'd like to welcome Ujjwal on to a full Manufacturing Hub episode. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Vlad.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Ujjwal. I think it's going to be an excellent conversation, as Dave has mentioned. Before we dive into that, could you give us a bit of an introduction of yourself? I know you have a very interesting background. You've been in some very large companies in our industry. So walk us through your career. Tell us how you got started in manufacturing, and ultimately explain to us a little bit more what you are doing today.
Great. So I'm a mechanical engineer. Started my career at General Motors in Detroit. Did my MBA from Michigan, Raw School of Business, where I still am actively engaged mentoring kids as they think about this post-AI world. Then I was with GE for 10 years, Honeywell Process Solutions for 7 years. Then I ran the largest physical AI-based robotics platform, Teradyne Robotics. And now I'm with Siemens. I'm president of Siemens Automation Americas.
Ujjwal, let me ask you one follow-up question, right? So coming into the industry with a mechanical background and now knowing obviously a lot more than when you had graduated, do you think the mechanical route was the most interesting and most optimal one versus, choosing maybe software, maybe chemical engineering? I know there's a lot of options, especially for those entering our field. And how do you see the industry transforming? I know that Siemens has a lot of different software solutions in addition to a lot of the mechanical or electrical components. Could you explain to us some of those maybe nuances?
No, absolutely. So the mechanical engineering, when I started, it was already very software-based modeling engineering. Actually, my dad, he's a mechanical engineer, and he thought my engineering was useless because I'm not doing the mechanical engineering the way he did, with a lot more measurement instruments and stuff. I was doing everything on a software. But I feel that that way of thinking, like a mechanical engineer for that matter, any engineer focuses on solving customers' problem. A mechanical engineer does it through math and physics, which is what I was always excited about. I would say that way of thinking absolutely helped me manage my technical career to the marketing career to last 15 years. I've been running global businesses. It is the best decision my dad nudged me towards.
Gotcha. And I guess
you can't nudge anyone. I can't nudge my kids to do what I want them to do, what I do.
Believe me, I know that same feeling. I'm probably a number of years behind you. I have a 3-year-old and a 7-month-old, and I'm also thinking in my head, where do I send them? You know, what kind of education should they be getting? But that's an entirely, I would say, different conversation. Let me ask you maybe today, right? So you have relatively recently joined Siemens, and you're on the digital industry side, which is the DI acronym. For someone who's unfamiliar with, I know that there's a lot of different branches within Siemens. Could you paint us a picture of what it is that you are overseeing as far as the portfolio goes?
Sure. So you might know Siemens is the largest industrial automation and industrial software company out there. In our automation portfolio, we have digital transformation, discrete transformation, discrete automation to process automation, intra-logistics automation, so for warehouses and stuff. We also have a building automation business, which is not in digital industries, but it is within Siemens, which we often pull in to solve customers' bigger problems. And I feel that this platform approach, where you go to the customer and with the entire portfolio, and not trying to sell any products in your portfolio, but solving the customer's problem by stitching in all the software and hardware, from process to discrete to building, intralogistics, everything together, is the way in which we can engage with the customer as they go to this next generation of operational and digital transformation. Industry 4.0, some people call it Industry 5.0.
Absolutely. And I think, speaking of the customer, right, I think that this is the main topic that we've talked to you about at Automate, that we wanted to maybe unpack for our audience and those that may not be, I would say, as familiar with, but it is the concept of de-globalization, right? And I would dare to say that over the last, and maybe I'll let you paint a better picture, because you've obviously lived in many different industries, but also different companies, on what globalization has been over the last couple of decades, and then we can also transition us to what it is looking like in the industry today.
It's so interesting. Like, I'm thinking just 7 to 8 years back, everyone in the industry was talking about how do you globalize in the most efficient way. Some of my podcasts from just pre-COVID were all about how do you localize in different parts of the world to be closer to the customer. And now the whole model has fundamentally changed. For business resilience, for cost efficiency in this new world, leveraging more AI. Like, there are a lot of different reasons beyond just the fact that every country is trying to rebuild their own manufacturing base for job creation. I see that de-globalization is the new focus area for manufacturing and warehouse in almost every industrial end markets, whether it is automotive to semiconductors, aerospace, you name it. Everyone is trying to see how they can create a manufacturing capacity for their own regional needs, which has its implications on how you structure it to be globally competitive. 5 years back, if the customers have come with that kind of need, we as an industry would have struggled to meet those needs in a high ROI way, a high return on investment way.
Gotcha.
Today, with the latest software stack, with the hardware architecture, which is a lot more scalable than how it was in the past, with AI coming into the mix, which allows you to handle variability on standard hardware and software. now finally we as an industry, we have tools to allow our customers build those regionally focused supply chain and manufacturing ability while being globally competitive, while being agile and autonomous, some of the new needs coming out of the market.
Let me ask you one last follow-up before I pass it over to Dave, right? And for me, the big question is, what was the trigger for this transition, right? You've mentioned 6 to 7 years. So for me, that's basically COVID and perhaps the shock that we saw for the supply chain. Was that the only, I would say, or was that the main event that triggered this change in how we manufacture and produce globally? Or was there other factors that came into the mix?
I think that supply chain disruption which came post COVID was a big trigger. Everyone realized the importance of manufacturing resilience. If you had like companies which had access to supply geographically closer to where they operate, they were able to operate much more profitably, and they handled customers' requests much better than the ones who are stuck because of supply chain being too far away from your country of production or consumption. But additional triggers were how we politically handled that crisis post-COVID. You remember some of the first set of localization or say de-globalization investments came in life sciences, where we realized the hard way that those vaccines we always thought were produced for global consumption had these quota system, like based on your country of citizenship, you had access to some vaccines and others didn't have that. And that was a huge shocker to a lot of political leaders globally and to business leaders. And starting with life sciences, we saw investments in some of the defense related investments to what people started calling it critical, and these were really critical supply which you need for your respective countries to run. And people put all kinds of things in that folder, from steel mills to energy, power generation, semiconductors. Things now you see the list is really long for almost every country. And most of the investments right now we see in every part of the world is driven by those needs to build the local capability based on their respective priorities.
No, I agree. It is very interesting to think of strategic reserves, right, within a particular country or within a particular set of countries and regions, and what is important. Ujjwal, I think you made a really interesting point with like COVID vaccines, and I feel like it was less people that I know in the US or maybe even the US and Canada that were experiencing some of those struggles, but the more people that I know outside of the US in like Central Europe, there were significant struggles. And then there were questions of where are we going to get these other vaccines from, and can we get the same type, and what is the deal that has to be made to go get vaccines from other parts of the world. And so it's very interesting if when you look at that as kind of like the key of it was a known strategic item, and right, like there is known strategic oil and gas reserves in most countries. And at some point it becomes the question of maybe not what is strategic and more of what isn't strategic, right? Like how long can any group go without needing to be able to produce their own power and to be able to fuel their own vehicles and to be able to do all of these other things? food, et cetera, et cetera. And so it is interesting, as we have discussed, to watch the shift back into more local or regional manufacturing strategically from the globalization that we saw starting in the 90s all the way through at least the early 2000s or the early 20 teens. So talking about globalization, so we've talked a little bit about why we're seeing the trend. I guess, can we talk about how we're seeing it come back? Because when we saw globalization, we saw a lot of it was labor arbitrage, right? Like we're moving from North America or moving from the United States, maybe as close as Mexico or Latin America, or many times we're moving to Japan and then to China and then to India and then to countries surrounding that to kind of continue to attempt to find the labor arbitrage. Are we going to see some labor arbitrage? Is it going to be automation arbitrage? How do you predict when you get to have all of these other conversations with business leaders?
Sure.
What are the trends that you're seeing?
So when these manufacturing jobs were moving out of US, those were primarily high volume, low mix kind of manufacturing operations, for which labor arbitrage was of huge value. You just take it, you move it to, say, a factory in China, you are able to execute it in a disciplined way with lower cost labor. It was huge supply chain advantage for any manufacturer. You go to China today, you will see there are big factories, but several of those, they have big volume, but no economies of scale, because the variability has increased so much that now to be able to manage that variability and continuous change, the more efficient way to run it is through a lot more robots and autonomous systems than in the past. So if you are you have a factory in Suzhou running, doing some stuff with bunch of robots and autonomous systems, there is no business case for leaving it in Suzhou. You can do it in Chicago with the same ROI. So I think there were two fundamental changes which happened. One is the need itself changed. So these factories, instead of low mix, high volume, now they are high mix, low volume, or more fragmented volume manufacturing operations. And the second is the advent of these advanced software stack and now AI, which is allowing you to handle those variability in a more cost effective way. So now we have the technology to meet that new need. And now when we are doing reshoring, these factories they're not as noisy and smelly or greasy how it used to be. These are much cleaner, high-tech manufacturing operations. For some of the products, it almost looks like lab operations. And that is what this new generation of workers they are looking for. We still have to rewire and design our factories to attract this generation of workers who looks like they would rather be a barista at a Starbucks than work in our factories. So I have to compete with the experience they are used to at Starbucks. And
Yes.
you go to factories these days, it seems very high tech, very fulfilling. They feel valued. They have a lot more numbers on their fingertips, through which they feel intellectually stimulated. When I had started my career at General Motors, manufacturers in general, we were focused around efficiency. So we were treating workers like this is the set of operations, just do it efficiently. And we didn't care, unfortunately, too much about their experience and how they are feeling. They were happy they had a job. This generation doesn't feel that way. Like even if they don't have job, they can be on their parents' money and they'll be happy. I guess.
I So I have a couple of clients who have not quite laboratory environments, but within the lines, very close. And it is like air conditioned so much you've got to bring a jacket during the middle of the summer inside because it is so cold. And it's cold because it needs to be cooler for the process facility. And so I think of that. And then I think of last summer, I was touring and doing some work with a facility, and we go to the part of we're going to do the factory tour, and we get to the first room, and they look inside, and they're like, "We've had a spill. Let's go do this in reverse, and hopefully we will have scraped enough of the food off of the floor into the waste bins in order to be able to walk through and not cover ourselves in the food stuff that we are going to see." So I guess one, I'm excited about that, and two, I think my standards are just so much lower than all of the new workers coming in to experience this. I am generally thrilled when there is a part of a facility that has air conditioning in the summertime. So I think that is very interesting. I think that is very interesting. I've got some thoughts and questions, but Vlad, I want to let you get in on this.
Sure. I would say generally I was a little bit spoiled earlier in my career, Ujjwal. So I worked for Procter and Gamble, where the facilities were very well maintained. There's a significant amount of investment that always went in for the general workers, but obviously for the engineering and R&D teams. So the environments were quite good. And then when I went into the food and bev industry, I realized the margins are significantly lower, and thus the facilities are in, I guess the best word I would say is in a worse state, right? So again, the conditions for the workers are quite a bit different, and I think a lot of improvements need to be made, again, to retain and to attract the right talent, right? I think you've mentioned that we're competing with some of the stores nearby, but also with on the engineering and I would say like more skilled labor force side with software companies that provide open desk environments, right? Like if you go to a campus for Google or Facebook, I think it's a lot more, to some extent, enticing for an engineer that's done like software computer science.
Table.
Exactly. So we still have a ways to go. It's definitely an interesting environment. I wanted to ask you, a follow-up question. So I've been following a little bit closely nowadays the semiconductor industry, right? And it seems to me, right, and this is where I want you to pitch in a little bit, that the time frame as to when we'd be able to not only bring the facilities in, because obviously that's a financial investment, but to upskill the labor, right? It requires a lot of very specialty type of skill to be able to run those facilities. And the projections I've at least read about were 5 to 10 years at a minimum, right? Because we've outsourced a lot of that to, as you know, TSMC does almost all of the chips globally. So I'm curious, maybe your thoughts on the different industries. Are there industries that will reshore a little bit faster than others, and some challenges, I guess, surrounding that?
So interestingly, semiconductor, it's a very high-tech industry, and we with some of the most low-tech way in which they have developed the skill set in their workforce. I probably am exaggerating a bit, but it's not as well documented to the level that it can be automated and moved to autonomous operations. Especially when you go away from the front end fab, which is pretty autonomous, but anything back end, we still use lot of tribal knowledge, people who have been doing the same thing for a long time in a particular way, which is one of the key barrier to documenting a lot of those processes to a level that you can easily train a new person. But that is not the issue with a lot of other industries. For example, life sciences. Life sciences also had lack of good digital documentation, but they have really good documentation because they needed that for FDA approvals. So while they are going through their digitization, we still have well thought out processes through which, if you want to build the same capability in US, we can train people in a systematic way and bring them up to speed quickly. I see in defense space, like there are some new manufacturing facilities which are coming up, making things which some of those we have never made before, like say drone manufacturing, some of the micro satellites which we are involved in, those rockets which go in the space, the companies I'm talking about. All those projects are something which we have, like the world has not done before. But since some of these manufacturing operations came up in post-software world, we had good documentation, good processes, and as soon as you have things laid out well, it is easier to train either the human workers or if you want to use that to program your robots. So semiconductor is a special case. We see similar issue on some of the aerospace manufacturing stuff where since we had only handful of suppliers, they didn't need to document everything and stuff, so it becomes difficult to outsource and train people, insource and train people quickly.
I feel like sometimes if you're a small number of suppliers, you feel like your competitive advantage is the fact that you do not have the information documented and you have retained that in your brain. Although I see it almost across the board of groups who didn't think about that or didn't think they need it. I, a couple of years ago, did a project with a food and beverage, a large Fortune 50 food and beverage company. And at one of the facilities, we were going and building a knowledge base, still very much by hand. And AI, one of those tools, I'm very happy I don't have to go build these by hand anymore. But we had specifically made the comment of there was one gentleman that did all of like the repacking and rebuilding of the valves. And he had been there for 45 years. And so when I would imagine that no one repacked or rebuilt a single valve other than this guy for 45 years, that number was probably true. And I highlighted it as we were getting ready to start the project. And then at one point while I was on site doing some of the physical collection of this data so we can go build the knowledge base out, I'm like, oh, where is this person? It would really be great to sit down with them because they seem really critical to the process. And they're like, oh, they retired. And I'm like, oh, and they're like, but it's okay. They'll be back in February to do all the valves because we still have no idea how to do any of this work.
The oil and gas industry went through that. A lot of industries went through that in post-COVID.
Yes.
Post-COVID, a lot of experienced workers, they left industries like oil and gas, mining, and several of them. And we had, since we did not document things which were in their brain, like the industries were struggling.
Absolutely. And I think we will continue to see that cascading effect industry to industry, maybe starting with some of the larger facilities, but they're going to go pull in as much talent from the smaller facilities by paying them more money. And then we're going to go see that kind of cascade down into smaller facilities and smaller organizations. Ujjwal, I guess, let me ask the question. So we've talked about needing more automation. We've talked about making these facilities look and feel better and to be able to attract and retain talent for the next generations that are coming up. What does the time frame look like, right? It's strategic and we'd all like to be able to snap our fingers and we suddenly have all of these new manufacturing facilities. I don't think that's possible. We have all of the supply chain and other issues, and there is a lack of humans who are able to go do the work. Even if we were to say we want to go build 10 facilities tomorrow, it's not possible. So I guess Do you imagine we're going to see industry by industry a shift based upon how strategic they are? Do you imagine that where it's just going to be a slow start across the board? How do you imagine that's going to look, and what is the time frame that you would imagine that we will start seeing these facilities up and running in volume?
So I would. There is a different story, industry by industry. We were talking about semiconductors. There is huge investment going on in the semiconductor space. I'm expecting a lot of semiconductor manufacturing coming back to US, especially some of the custom chips. But it'll take time. It won't be, we are not talking about 26, 27, big boom in lot of workers getting jobs in the semiconductor manufacturing space. It will be a slow ramp up. AI data centers is something which is going on right now. And most of these are in remote locations, so you need a lot more autonomous and remote operations. Power generation, mostly for AI data centers. Right now, we are looking for every way in which you can get power. Whether it is your traditional, say, fossil fuel-based power generation, renewables, nuclear, hydro, everything is in the mix right now. So that one is actively going on. Then defense and space. Those are spaces where I see a lot of new manufacturing coming up because there is a lot of investment, both private and government investments coming up in both defense and space segments. And finally, life sciences, where I have not seen this level of investments in the life sciences greenfield in US in last several decades. And it is again interesting. The life sciences, when it left our shores, was more of a mass-produced drug manufacturing operations. The way it is coming back, now we are talking about cell and gene therapy, personalized medicine, precision biologics. It's a very interesting and different kind of manufacturing operations which you're talking about.
That is interesting. And I would say, especially for like those individualized therapies, that makes a lot of sense, financial, logistical, all of those reasons to have that manufacturing, to have those bioreactors as close as possible to the local regions so you can make them and ship them out, or you can make it just in time and ship them out a day or two ahead of need, as opposed to we need to make it and then we either need to put it on a very expensive plane ride, all of these batches, or we need to go put it on a boat and hope it makes it there in the appropriate 8 weeks and there isn't another supply chain issue at the docks. And so I agree. I think that is very interesting. That is, yes, please.
And there is a new level of integration in that example, Dave. We were making medicine in bulk, putting it on shelf, and then shipping it through our logistics network. That whole thing goes away because now you're talking about a lot size of one. But the even bigger change is the close integration of R&D and production into one entity. Because for making personalized medicine or precision biologics, you need somebody who is designing those drugs to be right next to whoever is producing it, because it's all one same thing. So you cannot use that model of manufacturing what we had learned in our MBA schools of you design, give it to the manufacturing, they do it in the most efficient way and then ship it. That whole model is outdated.
Exactly. And I think as we see more of the high mix, and I guess so for the listeners at home, if you're not used to kind of those words and topics, it's like very customizable, right? And so it goes, and instead of ordering, I don't know, like 500 million red cups and 500 million blue cups, it becomes I want to print individual t-shirts for each individual person, and they can go pick color and size and style and different things that they want on the fronts and backs and names and all of that. That is probably why, folks, if you're into t-shirts, you go and you buy them in bulk, or you buy them in lots, because they're probably being made somewhere close, because of all of the time and effort that it takes. And at some point, it makes more sense to do them much more manually on the t-shirt side, less manually, of course, on the bioreactor and pharma side, than it does to go order 500 million of any one particular t-shirt and then try to go sell every single one of those t-shirts. It's a very interesting kind of combination of supply chain and combination of manufacturing. It's like almost a new calculus that we get to go and invent as we are going through this.
Yeah, and to me it seems perhaps a reapplication to an extent of just in time that we've seen, for, let's say, like large maybe car manufacturers, because of the cost of the item, that can now be reapplicated to something I would say on a smaller scale and make sense financially, right? Obviously the business numbers need to make sense for smaller batches to be cost effective for both the manufacturer, the end user, and whomever is paying for some of those costs. Let me ask you, Ujjwal, a follow-up on that front, right? Like continuing the same train of thought, as I'm sure you're having many conversations with companies that have made very large investments, right? I know, for example, and I've put this in the comments, Eli Lilly, I believe, is standing up multiple plants. Procter & Gamble has made an announcement. Chobani, right? So there's a whole array of manufacturers that are investing billions of dollars, right? I'm curious, as you talk with them, what are some of the biggest challenges? So obviously there's regulatory requirements. You've mentioned, obviously FDA is a big component of anything that's on the medical side, on the food side. But I'm curious, any like other aspects or challenges? Are they finding the workers again that they need to stand up these facilities? Are they bringing talent from elsewhere? Is it automation? Right? We've talked a little bit off stream about there being other regions that are providing more cost-effective, maybe arms or other components. So I'm curious, as you're having those conversations, what are some of the challenges these companies are facing?
I think one of the terms which I hear again and again in my C-level meetings is they want their manufacturing floors to be adaptive. Not because they cannot plan things, because they know that the market conditions will change a lot. Primarily because in the past they were optimizing it for global scale. So by design, you had less variability. When you are doing it at a smaller region, your variations are a lot more. So they want their manufacturing floor to be something which can handle that variability without doing retooling. Like I still remember in my General Motors days, every June we would get 2 weeks off, because we used to retool everything and get ready for the next year model. You cannot do that anymore. Automotive companies, they change their models and configurations multiple times during the year, and you don't have the luxury of taking time off to do those reconfigurations. So your factory floor itself, your machines need to be such that it can handle that variability without killing the productivity of that process. So that adaptive manufacturing is the number one thing which I hear. The second is people are worried about the hype around AI. They feel that how much of this can I use today, and how should I be designing my factory floor and my warehouses today so that I don't lose the competitiveness 3 years down the line. Like they don't even say 5 years, 10 years down the line. They know that this AI is disrupting the processes at a very fast rate. So they want to bring in a platform through which they will be able to grow rather than feeling stuck. So there are some new business models which have come up which allow people to migrate to or start with a technology platform, both hardware and software, which keeps them up to date as the technology stack evolves. It's also people don't want any custom hardware or custom software. They want things which are more configurable so that they can mix and match things. You have lot more third party software based use cases on the factory floor now than say 10 years back. There are small companies which nobody had heard of. They have come up with really innovative, say, quality inspection solution or a laser cutting optimization solution. Like everybody wants to take advantage of these innovations, and in lot of these C-level meetings, they ask that you as Siemens, how will you enable the activation of all these innovative solutions on your platform. So customers are no more looking for even big players like Siemens to come and provide everything. They said, you give me a platform and give me an ecosystem. And in that ecosystem, I should be able to pull in other innovative companies, which is a big change versus 30 years back. You remember, like when I started with GE, we were vertically integrated in a lot of segments, and that vertical integration went away. Everyone was focused around their core. Now this is going to the next level, where it's not about just focusing on your core. You have to have a platform which, like an app store, which allows a lot of other people in your ecosystem to bring in best other technologies on your platform, which is an interesting challenge.
Let me ask you a follow-up on that side, if I may, right? And so for a little bit more context, I entered the industry in 2013, right? So I had the opportunity up to this point to see the impact of COVID, but ultimately I didn't see the impact of, let's say, the 2008 crash that we had in the economy. Neither did I truly experience, the .NET bubble that had burst. So I'm curious, like, are you seeing this as being completely different than some of those events? Is this just another maybe cycle that we're experiencing? Is that fear, that you've described? Obviously, there needs to be risk mitigation, right? That's part of any, I would say, like companies' conversations. But ultimately, you cannot, I would say, have full customization of what's going to happen in even 3 to 5 years. It's very difficult, even for the top consulting group, to predict what's going to happen. So there is a level that we can get to, but it is a very difficult problem to solve. But your gut feeling is telling you that these conversations are warranted, and there has to be a difference of approach than we've seen in the past. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I did see the .com boom and bust, and I did experience the meltdown in 2008. I would say the disruption we are going through right now, it is closer to the pre-internet or internet boom, which we saw at the start of the century,
Okay.
which brought in lot of new innovations in the manufacturing world, in the product development, in all aspects of our economy. That is exactly what is going on right now. Do I feel that it is a hype? I think it is a hype. Internet was a hype, but it is will once the dust settles and the bubble pops, will this be a disruptive force? Absolutely. Will
Mhm.
it be 5x, 10x growth, which we are right now baking into these prices we have on all these companies? Probably not.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But it will still be several x. It will be 3x, 4x, which is
Mhm.
still huge disruption for the size of economy we have, for a 32 trillion economy in US and global economy. This is a huge force of change, and
Mhm.
there will be winners and losers, exactly the way we had big winners and losers post internet. Like there are
Mhm.
companies who move from that analog world to digital world and
Mhm.
change their business model, they change their product offering, service model, and others who drag their feet
Mhm.
thinking is a hype, so I should just hide somewhere. And you know, now there are so
Yeah.
many case studies around that. So
Yeah.
people are going through their Kodak moment right now, and I feel that we need to stay real. So um, I'm I'm still a technologist. I get excited with the technology, but I'm more grounded than how I was early in my career. And I stay focused on what are those use cases which solve real customer problems with which I can make real money. And there are tons of those new opportunities now.
Absolutely. No, I would agree with that. And to go back to one of your points about AI, Ujjwal, you had mentioned something about, manufacturing customers interested in what that enablement looks like. And that is certainly the shift that I have made in those conversations over the last 12 months, right? So for the first 12 months of the AI hype, it's everyone wants to know what AI is and how they can use it. And then that is shifted into how can we go develop things faster? How can we go use it for solutions? And I think that's the natural progression, and as is needed and as is appropriate. And so the majority of my conversations are around what does that enablement look like? Because worst case scenario, the application that you're looking at for AI doesn't work, but you have all of your data and it exists somewhere and it's clean and contextualized. And now you can go pull the next off the shelf, the next marketplace, the next Claude vibe coded idea that the intern who is more AI intelligent than the rest of the company all put together has come up with on, Thursday night. And you can go run that information through and see what sort of information you get. And so I completely agree that AI enablement, in order to go help an organization use these tools today and in the future, is certainly going to drive winners and losers within this next gold rush, if you will. And then the other comment you really made is about a marketplace. I mean, you and I have talked about marketplace, and longtime listeners have heard me talk about my love and desire of a marketplace where a whole bunch of third party potential competitors, but third party experts can come together and make the Apple store, make the App Store, make the Google Play Store, the things that really drove all of the value in the supercomputers in our pockets that are now very expensive supercomputers in our pockets. And I know we had briefly talked about accelerator, a Siemens accelerator, and some of those solutions. I do want to let the listeners know before we ask you a little bit about that we have a conversation coming up with Accelerator to go talk about some of the solutions that they're bringing to market and how they're bringing to market and what that economy of scale looks like, and of which I'm very excited about because, as I've told them, and as the listeners will hear shortly, I didn't think it was possible to go attempt to deliver that much software and that much software value in such a small upfront commitment.
No, absolutely. And the Siemens accelerator is a natural progression of Siemens positioning in the industrial automation and industrial software space.
Mm-hmm.
Each of our customers, as I was telling you, is looking for Siemens to solve their bigger problems, help them with the
Yeah.
operational transformation in this post AI world. and they don't want Siemens to provide all the software and all the hardware. They want us to provide all the hardware, software, which is our core strength, but enable all the other software from third-party sources, which integrates seamlessly within the Siemens ecosystem, which they are used to help them run their factories in a lot more productive way, efficient, safer way, agile way than they have ever run it.
Absolutely. I I completely agree. I do want to move us on to some career things,
Okay.
because we could go talk about this for the next like 2.5 hours. I do want to be respectful of all of our listeners' time. And so I do want to go touch on the careers. And so, Ujjwal, you said that you had been working with some Roth MBA students in order to help them go and understand what the landscape looks like careers-wise into the future. And as we were getting prepared for this, and as you were making your introductions, you had talked about your mechanical engineering degree and your father not thinking it was quite as valid as his because you guys were using 90 software as opposed to 6-inch thick blue engineering books, and how that the software has changed several times over that, and we have almost had to reinvent several of these careers and several of these career paths, certainly within the last 25 years, and probably a dozen or more times since the 60s and 70s. When you're talking to folks about post AI and what those career paths look like, how does that conversation start?
So the way my dad thought that this software will just kill the engineering as we knew it. He thought, what do you mean software will do the design? What will you do? And now we realize that software was just a tool. I was still using my brain to optimize things and predict things and bring products to market. I feel that this AI will be a new set of tools which will take lot of work which we as engineers used to say in few years we'll say we used to waste just redesigning things, playing around with things. Now you can set the boundary condition and let the AI play around with those different variations and give you the most optimized solution. But the bigger brain and the planning and the bigger design will still need to come from those engineers. So we as engineers will need to operate differently, think differently in this post AI world, exactly the way we work differently, thought differently in the post software world. The career counseling which I do with the Ross MBA students, the biggest thing which is top of their mind is will their job be relevant 3 years, 5 years down the line? I would say what the things which they learned of how the business world works, some of the basics will still remain true, but like how real life works, you will have to be open to learning these new business models which are evolving at a very fast rate. And anytime you are digging into the understanding of customers' real problem, you will stay relevant. If you're staying focused on this is how I did things or this is my solution, and you're looking for trying to force fit into customers' problem, those things will become redundant. Even in the AI world, in just last 4 years, you see the AI inference, the inference cost was 22,000, 22 billion, 22,000 per billion tokens.
Yep.
Now it is down to $70 per billion tokens. So it is the most disruptive cost reduction we have ever seen as human civilization. And that just means that the core AI models are commoditized. The only value will come through inferences and understanding customers' real problem and solving those problems in unique ways. And I ask the business school students to stay focused on understanding those customer problems and keep looking for solving those problems in newer ways.
I like that a lot. I like that a lot. I agree that if you are continuing to provide the human value and the human element and ask the questions and understand the actual tactical core problems that your customers are having, that is something that computers as a whole and AI in general and both specifically are going to struggle, at least currently. And I think that there's always the added value of being able to have the human touch in order to go have those conversations. And that human to human connection is going to be very difficult for computers or for AI in order to go and replace and still come to that same level of comfortability in order to dig into those core problems.
Absolutely.
For me, I think it's the creativity, right? And you've mentioned this, Ujjwal, as well. I think that the current, at least, iteration of AI that we have access to, it basically aggregated all of the information on the web and obviously the context that you added for a specific problem to then give you solutions that have been applied elsewhere. Well, hopefully the students at the MBA level realize that there is value in coming up with either other solutions or adding, like their own touch that may make more sense for the specific business that the AI simply cannot refine right at this stage. But it is a difficult, I would say, challenge, but also a concern. If I was still again in school, I certainly would be trying to figure out where do I locate more of my time. Is it learning, as you mentioned, maybe the going through business cases, right? I've read, for example, the Kodak business case during my MBA. So do I just spend more time learning previous business cases, or am I just scrapping all of that and spending a lot more time utilizing and upskilling on the AI tools? It is an interesting question, and I don't know if I have the answer necessarily now, but I think it definitely shifts how the current students are going through any of the degrees, right? We've talked about engineering and MBA, but ultimately I think it's a question for many other disciplines as well. So I appreciate the perspective.
Yes. I would say I feel like the not just AI, but the general market, it really calls into question a lot of degrees that some people may go get, especially at, secondary or tertiary or deeper down schools. There are certainly lots of areas, if you're going to be a doctor, if you're going to be a lawyer, if you're going to have other professional degrees such as engineering, that it makes sense that there is tactical and tangible value in order to go have that. I think it really opens up the question for many of the other degrees. And even if you're going to go get an MBA, right? Like if you're going to a tier 1 or maybe a tier 2 school, so you're top 20 to 40, that almost certainly makes sense because there will almost certainly be jobs there. But if you're at a tier 4 school, or if you're going to become a lawyer and you're at a tier 4 school, will you ever be able to pay back the money that you just spent on that education based upon the learning and additional job potential? And I think AI and a lot of the shift that we've been seeing really calls into question all of those. And I think it's been a shift that we've probably seen over the last 10 to 15 years, is it really calls into question a lot of those previously assumed correct ideas of you go get to any of these schools and get any degree, and then there are these endless job opportunities. I feel like there has been a shift, and we will continue to see that shift overall.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Ujjwal, this has been amazing. We want to go ask you the last questions we get to ask all of our guests. And if you guys are new here in Ujjwal in episode 267 is your first episode, you are in for a treat because the first one is one of my most favorite questions, right? And it's predict the future. So Ujjwal, when we're talking about the future, when we're talking about de-globalization, put it all together for us. What does de-globalization look like over the course of the next 2 to 5 years?
So I would say each of the countries, even the regions, they will be building capability needed to serve the needs of their respective communities. It will mean a lot more localization of what you need for life sciences, drug manufacturing, to any of the local product needs, food and beverage manufacturing. And we will closely watch where this thing settles down. Now, to run these more localized manufacturing operations will need a lot of creative way to structure these factory floors, and we'll need a lot more innovative ideas from everyone around the globe to help us create these next generation of factories. So I'm super excited. This is the level of innovation and new offerings I had not seen in last 2 decades in the manufacturing space. It's mind-boggling.
Absolutely. It is very interesting and it is very exciting. You just gave us some fantastic career advice and some fantastic items about how careers are changing. I would like to go ask you a similar career advice question to the ones that we get to ask all of our guests. So if someone is coming to work for you and they're early to middle career and they are looking for the best piece of career advice in order to kind of figure out what they want to do with their career or figure out the ever-changing landscape, what is that piece of career advice?
So there I'll use one of the quotes I often use from this book, which is one of my all-time favorites, from Eric Ries, The Lean Startup. Is the only way to win is to learn faster than anyone else. Several of us have this MVP, minimum viable product, as a common term used now all across the industry. It came from this the Lean Startup book. Anyone who wants to come work with me, I say, are you hungry about creating something which you'll be proud of 3 years from now? How will you take risk with ideas and people? In the end, that is where the innovation and disruption will come from. People who know how to take that risk and channelize it the right way, give the air cover to the team to fail and learn and grow from there, are the ones who will create the future. And I want to be on the right side of the history with these people.
I like that. It has been a while since I've read The Lean Startup. I do remember that is one of a very small handful of business books that you feel very exhilarated, right? Like life has almost been breathed back into you as you're reading and then after you've read that, as comparative to lots of other business books that may just be a whole bunch of slogging in order to attempt to distill down the message. So I think that's fantastic. Eric Ries, the Lean Startup. If you guys are watching live or listening, Vlad has put that in the chat and it will be in the show notes. So we typically go ask for a book or content recommendation, and you've given us The Lean Startup. Do you have another book recommendation for us?
The Lean Startup is something which I would strongly recommend. I have this whole list of books I read, but Lean Startup for me gives me the framework to go through the ups and downs of the market, which we go through all the time. So when Vlad was talking about what happened in the dot-com burst to 2008 burst to things which are growing right now, I keep going back to that Lean Startup framework, which is a simple way to just focus on learning. We jump to let me start making money right away. You have to take a step back, saying, are you solving real customer problems? Let's learn about the customer problem first. If you are selling a painkiller for real pains, you will make money.
I like that. As you were saying that, I am reminded of this information systems professor that I had, who normally taught MBA classes, and I think I had him at the very last end of my undergrad. And I had asked him for some advice on something. And I don't remember exactly what he said, but the part of it that I will never forget is talking about learning, right? And he said something to the effect of, sometimes real jobs, going to work for someone else, prevents you and gets in the way of that learning. And it is very true. I mean, it's very true in almost any way you can possibly take that. And there is extreme value in the continuation of that learning and trying to go spin that out into whatever comes next. And I think when we talk about the AI and the next revolution, we are certainly going to see people that will be able to iterate much faster with much smaller teams than we've ever been able to see in the past. Fantastic.
The next question, I guess I can pitch it, and this was my creation a little bit, right, Ujjwal? So if I was an entrepreneur in residence, whether that's at Siemens or any other cutting edge firm, what would you have me work on? What kind of ideas do you believe are very interesting to pursue in our industry?
So I feel that there is no dearth of new technologies which can transform our factories and product creation. Things where we are still struggling is the customer adoption, which is the deployment piece.
Okay.
If you want to really help the industry with this last mile problem, which is taking, whether it's a robotic solution or a new laser cutting instrument or a CNC machine, how do you make it plug and play? That last mile quick deployment will add lot of value for the industry, and it will make it will bring down the risk of adoption for these new technologies which are coming to the market at a very fast pace.
Interesting. And I guess just as a small follow-up, you think it's a technology challenge, or do you think it's an adoption in terms of like the human, maybe like education or perspective challenge? Is it more creating maybe again like content on why those solutions are beneficial as opposed to improving the innovation itself?
I still feel that it is a piece of technology problem.
Gotcha.
So all the technologies which we develop, we still develop a very innovative product. To make it plug and play, you need to think of the system and the solution where it could be a small piece of code and bunch of hardware which goes with these multiple products, which makes it plug and play.
Gotcha.
You say you want to install an autonomous welding cell. You can get a welding robotic system from someone, but if I give you a piece of software and a compute platform which takes your welding cell, immediately integrates into your ERP and MES system autonomously. Like, it recognizes all the different cables plugged in different places and doesn't ask you for red goes into red, blue into blue. It recognizes it with its core intelligence. That makes your deployment seamless. So thinking through what are those barriers to quick deployment, what are the barriers to make it plug and play. There are some more boring technologies, like these are not technologies for which you need to spend 3 years. These are simple observation, living in the customer world kind of technology, and package it in a kit which makes the deployment faster.
Interesting. No, I really appreciate that. It's reducing friction of integration ultimately. But yes, like our industry is very, as we all know, interesting on that front. I think there is work to be done. So no, it's an interesting idea for sure. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think that's a fantastic observation. We have certainly had conversations about how some companies have had major exits or major round raises, and their competitive advantage is not that their technology is better. Their competitive advantage is that you can buy it and deploy it 100 times quicker than their closest competitor. And I feel sometimes as technologists, Vlad and I, Ujjwal, many times listeners of this show, sometimes you can get caught in the weeds if we want to make it, marginally better, as opposed to we want to make it significantly faster to go deploy. And so I think that is a very interesting observation. We appreciate that. Last question for you is, how can our listeners help? Who should reach out? Who are you looking to connect with? I assume Siemens is hiring, but how can our listeners help you in what you're doing?
Sure. So yeah, we are growing at a very fast rate right now. It's with everything in the industry right now, it's on steroids.
Yeah.
We are looking for good technologists, good solution thinkers, sellers with consultative selling experiences. So we are looking for all different kinds of talent to help us build this new generation of operations for our customers. So come become part of this manufacturing revolution. In addition, I'm always looking for ideas of what else we as Siemens can do to help with your specific operational needs. And I remain humble around complexity which each one of our customers face on a day-to-day basis. Give me a call, share your experiences, and I'll connect you with the relevant folks with the right solution.
That is fantastic. Ujjwal, thank you so much for joining us again for this show. Listeners at home, live or podcast form, thank you guys so much for joining. If you're watching live on LinkedIn, please make sure you're following Ujjwal and Siemens so you guys can have all of those updates, as well as Manufacturing Hub, Vlad, and myself. And then if you're listening on podcast or YouTube form, you guys are absolutely awesome. Please hit the like button and the subscribe button and rate us 5 stars and follow along. You guys will be able to listen to this show almost certainly tomorrow. And Ujjwal, I say that every episode because when I remember to say it and Vlad publishes it the next day, we just have more podcast listeners, which is pretty